Good afternoon, and welcome to the Scottsdale Development Review Board public meeting. The purpose of the Development Review Board is to maintain the quality of development in Scottsdale by reviewing all design aspects of proposed development and the relationship of its design components and the surrounding environment and community. The board also reviews all preliminary plats for subdivisions to assure conformance to the policies and ordinance requirements. Caitlin, roll call.
Councilwoman McAllen.
Present.
Vice Chair Brand.
Here.
Commissioner Joyner. Board Member Peaser.
Here.
Board Member Fakih. Board Member Mason.
Here.
Board Member Robinson.
Here.
6 present. Thank you.
Thank you. Citizens wishing to speak during public comment time or speak specifically on any agenda item may fill out the blue request card to speak. And citizens who are interested in submitting written comment may fill out a yellow written comment card. And you can bring that over to Caitlin. I believe we do have some public speakers, and I remind the audience that the board's review relates to design matters and does not include consideration of existing zone district designations, zoning entitlements, or allowed uses within the zoning districts. The board's motion may be to approve modified with stipulations, to deny the request, or continue the case. Thank you for your interest and time, and we will start. Okay, so we will begin public comment with Malin Penkwich. Oh, the non-agenda, sorry, I'm so sorry. Do we have any? Oh, we have to do the, Brad.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, Councilwoman McAllen. Just want to note we do not have any public comment on non-agendized items. The public comment that has been submitted today is for the one agenda item we do have. As far as the administrative report, I just want to mention that next week's meeting that was regularly scheduled has been canceled. There are no agenda items for that meeting, so it has been canceled. Our next meeting will be November 6th, and I do believe we have 1 or 2 items on that agenda to discuss. So November 6th, hope to ever see everybody here. And that concludes my administrative report. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 18th, 2025 Development Review Board meeting?
So moved. I'll move to approve the regular meeting minutes of the September 18th Development Review Board meeting as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilwoman McAllen.
Yay.
Vice Chair Brand.
Yes.
Board Member Peaser.
Yes.
Board Member Fakih. Board Member Mason.
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
So Brad, do the staff presentation first.
Certainly, Councilwoman McAllen will have staff present the one agenda item to start, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Councilwoman McAllen, Vice Chair Brand, and members of the board. My name is Chris Zimmer. I'm a senior planner here with the City of Scottsdale, and I'm here to present the art in Scottsdale. Give you a little context on the site. It is just north of the intersection of East McKellips Road and North Miller Road. A little detailed aerial to give you a little bit of understanding of what it exists today. It is just west of Miller Road. The existing zoning surrounding the site is R5. The only other zoning district adjacent to this property is the R17, which is directly west of North Miller Road. Some site details: it's currently vacant. The applicant is proposing 5 3-story buildings consisting of 23 units. The parcel size is just over an acre. Building height is 36 feet allowed, exclusive of the rooftop appurtenances. They are proposing 33 feet 4 inches, excluding the rooftop appurtenances. The parking required based on the units and the size is 50. They have provided 50 spaces, 46 for the units and 4 for guest parking. The open space requirement for this is about 8,465. The applicant has provided 8,794. The asterisk is for the frontage open space. I'll come back to that just to give you guys an understanding of how the site has kind of developed over time and where the site configuration has come from. The number of dwelling units allowed for this property per the density would be about 26, and they are only proposing 23 currently. Here's a site plan. You can see that the access is off of North Miller Road and creates somewhat of a T on the site. Refuse is provided on site as well as all the necessary easements for public access. Here's the open space plan. These are some elevations for the proposed development. This is the landscape plan. You'll see on your dais that I did provide you with an updated one. The big change on that one is just changing the artificial turf to regular turf or real turf. Here's some renderings for the proposed development. The top one is off of North Miller Road, and the bottom right one is on the adjacent west property line, or sorry, east property line. Another rendering. One of the main factors that has driven the site configuration currently, as you see, is the frontage open space. I've highlighted it in blue on this open space plan. The requirement for frontage open space is approximately 6,650 square feet, and they've provided 6,670. And that has pushed most of the buildings towards the back, as our code does not allow open space to go any further than what the width is of that distance between the open space. If I can show that right here, essentially this opening, it can't go any further than about half. Public communication, so we've received 3 in direct opposition to the project, 1 in support, or actually 2 in support now. That second one is actually on the dais as well that we just received today. And the remaining were some suggestions for the proposed development. The action requested is approval for the site plan, landscape plan, building elevations for a new 23 multi-family development in 5 3-story buildings on a plus or minus 1 acre site. That completes staff's presentation. The applicant is here. He does have a presentation as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Any questions, anyone? Okay.
All right. Taylor?
Madam Chair, I know we have 10 minutes. Would it be okay to get a couple extra minutes because the landowner would like to make a statement up front, if that's okay? All right, great. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is David Free. I live at 6902 East First Avenue in Scottsdale, Arizona, 85251. And I'm the developer on this project. I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself before the team gives the presentation. I've been a resident of Old Town Scottsdale for the past 27 years. I not only live here, I've built my career and my businesses here as well. You may recognize me from community involvement, as well as seeing me around town with my wife walking my dog. I'm a local guy. I love this city and genuinely care about its future. I have experience in developing smaller projects here in Scottsdale, so I understand and appreciate the city's expectation for quality and design. This particular site has been especially challenging due to its size and shape, but we were committed to creating something that fit within the existing codes, asked for no special favors, and resulted in a project we could be proud of. Because of those challenges, it took 18 months for us to get to this point. I know a couple of our neighbors Maylin and Trevor and a few other folks are here today to share their concerns. Mr. Earl from our team has met with them in person, over Zoom, on the phone, to hear their concerns and to best address those concerns. We have made sincere efforts to resolve their concerns, but unfortunately, city codes have limited what we were able to do. It hasn't been for a lack of effort. We truly want everyone to feel good about this project. So while we recognize that some still wish certain things were different, the high-end townhomes we are proposing will turn this vacant, unsightly lot, often attracting vagrancy, into a residential enclave. Our goal is to elevate the area and to be great neighbors for years to come. As I said at the outset, our team has been working closely with the city staff for more than a year and a half on the design and the site fit. We believe the end result is a thoughtful, high-quality development that reflects Scottsdale standards and character. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the VRB, for your record, I'm Taylor Earl with the law firm of Earl & Curley. We're at 3101 North Central Avenue, and thank you for that additional couple of minutes. So here also with Mark Tomacek, who is the architect of record on this site, and I may have some phone a friend moments if you have questions. So staff alluded to this. I will just note that originally the rendering was done off of Miller Road, but we subsequently had to reshuffle the site. We didn't updo the renderings because it's just showing the building. But this would be if you were like in that internal kind of looking southward. This is the view that you would see. So I think that what we tried to do on the design was to not just take the same image and sort of copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste all the way down, but to make it feel more cohesive and to not just feel like it was constantly being copied and pasted. So the way these work is that you would have, this would be the front, and then off of the back you would have the driveways. It'd be a two-car garage. I will just note too that off the renderings, one little change between the rendering elevations is we've removed those sort of that block up off of front doors, and that just has an open area. So a little bit of history on the site, because I do think it's sort of relevant to kind of where we're at today. I'm just going to show you the evolution through the historic aerials. As we proceed, you've got looks like manufactured housing to the north, and eventually you get manufactured housing to the east of the site. And then what comes into east of the site are the condos, where at least some of the residents live today. Originally, there were some single-family homes on the site. And then ultimately, you get to where we're at today. You've got apartments to the north, you've got the condos to the east, and then the site is now vacant. There's a multifamily project on the northwest side of the site, and we have the support letter that you received is from those owners that live in that particular spot. We also went through an abandonment process. There was this little finger of Polk Street that was still there, and so that's now been approved for abandonment by the city council. And those 4 parcels combined with that little portion of Polk Street would come into one unified development rather than having a piecemeal development along the way. This is kind of the state of disrepair that Polk Street had gotten in, because it gets kind of weird that it was even a public street sort of over the years. And so it has been a site that's received some vagrancy, and so we think this will be a good way to get it cleaned up. Zoning on it is R5, and then the R5 to the north and to the east, and then also commercial zoning to the south. So just wanted to put the context in there. And then also I think the land use here is important, that we have urban neighborhoods both for our site and for the condos to the east of us. All right, in terms of elevations, I'll just zoom in here on a couple of things. So in terms of livable square feet, we're about 1,700, and then there's 2 balconies per unit. Again, these are not divided this way. You get the first floor, second floor, and third floor as part of the unit. And then the two-car garages are 200, so you're about 2,000 overall, including the livable and the extra space as well. And then our intention here is to have high-end finishes within the units so that these will be very nice quality units. And that's really what the developer is seeking here, something that fits the site, but also is a high quality. We think it'll bring a good measure of quality to the area, so as people either develop or redevelop, that you're having a nice mark for, hey, this is high quality up in this area. I mentioned that. Again, we can come back to any of these things you'd like to. In terms of the area, we think that this area is really well positioned, 303, the 101, the Indian Bend Wash, which is why we think a product of this high quality will succeed at this area. We think there is a market for something of this type. In terms of the general plan, we put this within our narrative, but I think it's worth repeating just a few things here. Talking about the health, welfare, safety, convenience of persons residing in the vicinity. We're bringing in high-end residential that also puts eyes on the street in a neighborhood that really needs it. We think it'll act as a catalyst. I think it'll increase in values in the general area, and kind of shows how you can do small infill successfully. Determining the appropriateness of all development in terms of community goals. We think that it builds upon Scottsdale's design ethos for quality development. We have the deciduous trees and shrubs that staff talked about, and we have larger living area than if it were for apartments, for example. General plan also talks about character areas and addressing edges. So we think that given the location of Miller here on the edge and next to Tempe, that this is a good development for this particular location and consistent with that. In terms of communications with the neighborhood, so just want to run you through that timeline. So originally the architect sent out a notification. That was about a year ago. Then there was an abandonment case that was, again, separate from today's proceedings. And then ultimately went to the abandonment. That's where Mylene made her comments. So I reached out, gave her my card, say, hey, happy to follow up on, because they sounded like design comments. And I hadn't heard from her, so I reached out to staff, got the information, texted her, said, would you like to meet? She said that would be great. And so we were able to go meet on site. And Trevor was there and another gentleman. And so I was able to see kind of the spacing and talk through some potential mitigation measures. Kind of wanted to listen and understand the concerns that they had. And then we had a Zoom meeting as a follow-up. I did some research on things that I wasn't quite sure of at the time, talked to staff, did some research, came back, talked more about the mitigation measures. And then Maylin and I had a follow-up phone call a few days later. And then there's been some small text messages back and forth. So definitely try to keep the line of communications open. This was our original plan, and that was ultimately slightly revised. The main difference, really the key difference here, was the turf the staff mentioned, but also on the east side there, we're putting in a tree, the shoestring acacia. We understand the sort of nature of that space, and so there was some concern about what trees we would have in that space. And so these are a great tree for that spot. They're fast growing, they're evergreen, drought tolerant. They can thrive in full sun, but also do well in shady locations, and they can fit, they grow upright and straight. And so we think that this is a good tree. Worked with Tim McQueen, who does a lot of work in the valley, and swapped that tree out. And there's also some existing, this tree, this picture is about a year old, but we think this is still reflective of what's happening. So there's some good trees on their side. We had offered also to, if they wanted us to plant trees on their side of the fence, to fill in maybe some of the holes. Maybe trees had been there in the past and had died since. And that was one of the offers that we made to the neighbors, which they politely declined. So we respect that, but we wanted you to know that we did try to offer something. There was a question early on about lighting. I think that question has been resolved, but we have wall packs of low lighting, 0-foot candles at the property line. Staff did get into the open space. That's something that came in sort of late in the process, and Mylene had talked about, hey, why not just shuffle that open space and kind of put it over between us? That would help everybody. And that is something that we totally understand, but it just has to be at that location because of the frontage requirements and the calculations. And so it isn't something that we could just pull away from Miller Road and put in a different location. It needs to be at that location because it is a frontage open space requirement. This is a big important part of the site too, is this hammerhead turnaround, making sure that that street lines up so that we can have garbage or also fire trucks come in, back out, and leave. So making sure that we had that ability was a very important part of the site. Designing a site this small in this sort of J shape was difficult, but that is something that was ultimately reviewed and approved by Fire and Refuse. This is the sort of spacing I want to just mention real quickly here. Between the units, which I know Mylene's going to talk about as well, setback-wise, we're at about 24 feet, but there is a 4-foot overhang, and so if you were to say from second story to second story, you'd be looking at about 20 feet, just under 21 feet. And then it gets wider as you go further north, and so that distance becomes wider. Again, 29 is a setback, or 25 between second stories. Just north of the site, so there's a subject site at the bottom, just north of the site, this is a condition that you see. That same type of spacing is one that you would see just north of the site in this project here. So if you see here, just measuring it off of the aerial, you're looking at about between 14 and 23 at that location, and about 20 feet at that location. You see that there's trees that can grow here in that second arrow into that space, and also that spacing is something that's just very near to the site. It's typical of urban development where you would have sort of less spacing in between. If you go down a little bit or up a little bit on Miller Road and McDowell, you see for this long run of about 300 plus feet, you have a similar sort of spacing in between, 20 feet here and about 19 feet in that location. And then just across the street, you also have, again, conditions where you're having a sort of narrow spacing for these stretches. Also, if you think about single-family homes, if you look at the standards there, you would have, these are the different lot areas for these R17, 10, and 18. Heights are allowed are 30 feet. Side yard setbacks are allowed to be 5 to 7, 10, which means the spacing between buildings is anywhere between 10 feet to 20 feet in between those single-family homes. So with that, happy to answer any questions, because that's my time.
Great. Do we want to ask questions or wait and then have them do public comment?
Councilwoman McAllen, that's up to you and the board if you'd rather have public comment first before some deliberation.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, let's go with public comment. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first public comment is Maylin Pankwitz, and she has been donated time from Carmen Kalash and Barbara Bonilla. And so we're going to give you 10 minutes. Will that give you time? Thank you.
All right. That's not it. That's just the floor plan, yeah. That's not my document.
Technical adjustments.
Excuse me, and I apologize, council member and members of the DRB. Maybe we could take the other public comment first if that person does not have a presentation while we work through the technical difficulties.
Okay.
Apologize for that.
We can be flexible. In that case, public comment, we have Trevor Kraus, and he has donated time from Mario Rodriguez. So you'll have 5 minutes, Trevor.
Madam Chair and members of the board, my name is Trevor Kraus. I'm the HOA president and a longtime property owner at 303 North Miller Road, Casa de Amigos condominiums. I'm here to ask the board that you please take notes and take note of our concerns. My unit sits at Casa de Amigos, sits directly abutting the new development, and which is going to have the balconies overlooking my bedroom of my unit. I'm here to communicate our community's concerns regarding the layout and design of this development, which at 3 stories will remove our basic sun access and basic privacy, not because of especially those balconies, from the west side of our 2-story building. I want to let you know that we are fully aware of the R5 requirements and the setbacks, and understand that the developer can build to the minimum standards of R5 and 3 stories. We're not opposed to this development. We're happy that there's going to be a useful outcome, to that land. I'm realistic about this. We just are concerned about the setbacks mostly. We don't oppose it. It just seems that perhaps our condominiums weren't brought into fully consideration. I'm here to ask that you review this request from our perspective. Our southwestmost building has bedroom windows that, if the development is approved and built as proposed, is going to, they're going to completely lack this natural light that we've had for years. It's 2006. It's been grown. We have some beautiful big trees that are there that are probably going to be affected negatively as well. In addition to our west side, there's a landscape that I mentioned, and we have decades-old mature trees that give us shade and are quite nice to look at, quite frankly. And the lack of sun access by this new development will undoubtedly kill our landscape. I don't know too many trees that actually grow. They are said to grow in low light conditions, but we're talking about less than 20 feet, for it's a couple hours of light. In addition, it's going to cast a perpetual shadow on our trees and bedrooms. We'll lose our investment in the landscaping, but we'll also be losing a significant resale value, I believe, and equity within our affected units, especially those directly affected. Our largest concern is the minimal separation provided between buildings in the Arden southeast corner and our units. We have reviewed all the existing R5 developments adjacent to each other in our community, and while we do acknowledge that there are some that do abut to each other in minimal ways, we feel that perhaps a setback, more appropriate setback, can be found within the architectural elements. And your understanding of we have developments just north of us, north of us, that are right on Miller Road. There's no setback. It's the same city, same street. Approval of this development as it is proposed will set a precedent and in our neighborhood for non-context sensitive planning. And that leaves behind permanent consequences of poorly planned building locations with no access to natural light, a minimal amount of privacy. Maybe the balconies can go on the other side, and not be directly over our bedrooms, for instance. We're open to working with the developer for sure. We've worked in good faith with them, and we really appreciate some consideration perhaps from the council members involved. We want to have a little bit more setback, have that 21-foot distance between our building and the proposed building, which most of that setback is actually our existing setback, by the way. It will not only increase our that's going to reduce our values, but I think if we set them back, we can increase everybody's values, and we can all be kind of happy about that outcome. It just seems like a no-brainer to me to take consideration a little bit further of that setback. I'm here to request that the board provide additional stipulations for spacing on the southeast side of Arden, or continue the case so that a more contemplative Arden design development can be presented in the future. Both parties, the future owners of your townhomes, and our community will only benefit with larger setbacks, which will benefit both communities. We'll have more natural light, we'll have more privacy, mutually, and I believe that it'll make both of our properties more attractive to future homeowners and residents. I thank you very much, council members, Madam Chair, for your service and consideration of our matter.
Thank you, Trevor. Okay, our next speaker will be Malin Pankwich, and you'll have 10 minutes, Malin.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chairs and members of the board. My name is Mylin Pinkiewicz. I am a resident at 303 North Miller Road, and I am actually residing in that southwest building of Casa de Amigos. So I'm going to present our concerns to the board. I've already forwarded them in advance because I wanted you to take a look at them. So I appreciate your attention to this, and I also appreciate staff's ability to let us have this opportunity. It's really hard sometimes for residents to verbalize things in 3 minutes without visuals, so thank you so much for the opportunity. So our biggest concern is the privacy and the layout, particularly of the southeast portion of the Arden development, which is 3 stories high to our 2 stories. And, thank you. And it towers over our development, and we don't have a problem with development here. We just want that sunlight and we want that privacy. So this is a rendering of what it would look like to have these developments over here. And these are balconies that for some reason are facing our landscape rather than inside the development itself. We also feel like it's a shame. This is one of those conditions where the zoning ordinance is there to protect the single-family residences. However, the setback, honestly, site context is provided for the windowless sides of homes. Some of our neighbors have chosen to even put sheds. If they have windows there, they have blocked their windows. But then when it comes to our windows, we only have a 6-foot setback that they're providing to the property line. And I wanted to point this out. If you drove on City of Scottsdale roads today to get here, you drove on 11-foot width lanes. So it's almost half of that for the setback. And if you parked on the parking lot here, you likely park on an 8.5 width parking spot. So the setback is less than that. So I wanted to show you in this presentation, I've seen this case before. I am a planner. I work for City of Phoenix. I work for City of Scottsdale. And this is one of those conditions where I understand the developers need to fit as much as possible on one site, but then that makes the site sort of unusable in many ways. And that leaves that legacy behind. So we have some landscape concerns. As we talked about, you can see our tree line leans to the west because that's the afternoon sun that those trees have been getting for decades. And we have the concerns that with the 3 stories, we will lose that afternoon sun as well. I understand that they have shown examples that are similar to this, where trees have grown. Those are trees that were planted under those conditions, not trees that all of a sudden after decades get that shade. I wanted to show you, our trees lean to the west, and that's our landscape and mostly our 15-foot setback. I also feel like this landscape is very unrealistic. We have some tree species that truly have such a wide canopy, minimum 10 feet, and they're being placed in positions like near the trash refuse, where a trash truck will completely destroy them. Honestly, any landscape near a trash refuse and on that side of the refuse, if you think of a summer day, the microclimate that's created by that metal hot can will destroy that landscape. So that is required landscape that will be destroyed. It can be replaced, but likely every summer or every trash truck will destroy it. Likewise, the parking lot in the middle of the 2 eastern buildings, or the parking space in the middle of the 2 eastern buildings, is lined by lantanas. That is a condition that, yes, an inspector that inspects the site to approve it will give it the check, and then the moment it gets used, it will forever be stomped on. It can be replaced, and it will continue to be stomped on. So that is unusable land space, landscape space. And likewise, we have the use of this red push pistache. Like I said, those trees, if you've ever seen them, they're very majestic, very beautiful, 10 to 20 feet canopy, but we are fitting it in like 6 to 10 feet setback, and we don't think that's realistic and that they will grow to that amount, even with the shade that we have from both our developments now. We also have some fence and access concerns. We feel like the site plan is unrealistic and kind of disingenuous. We actually have a wooden gate, and the site plan is not calling it. The only thing I found labeled on the site plan is the property line. We've been told this is our fire access, but I've done a deep dive search on this, and I cannot find it. And I can only find the recorded plat showing it as an easement, but I cannot find the recorded easement itself. If it is indeed a fire access, I would say it's probably secondary if fire needs to get in by the pool. And it's now blocked in this landscape with trees and bushes. There is also another space that shows us an opening. It's not an opening, that's an existing chain link fence. And this is a different presentation, but during the floods that we had 2 weeks ago, that's where the water seeped through onto our path from our guest parking, is that chain link fence. So that would be a condition where it floods when the soil of the ground is permeable, and once it's built up, I can't even imagine. I know that sites are supposed to have retention, but we do have that concern. We found it out that they were not labeled, and we feel like it's almost an attempt to not talk to us about this. And then in terms of packing stuff on the site, we're supposed to have an ADA path. If you had a person with a true disability try to walk or roll to the northeast corner of the site, that's not the shortest path for a person with a disability. A full path should be provided, but it cannot, because we're trying to pack the required landscape everywhere else. I think this site needs less units to be able to function well and not just have items checked off. I've already talked about this. It's kind of like a corridor. If that chain link fence goes away, that's for homelessness activity that we already see on our site. We talked a little bit about lighting concerns, not only the landscape lighting, but if we have bedroom windows, 2 balconies that are constantly having their TVs on or lights on at 20 feet, again, less than the width of 2 traffic lanes, that's a concern for our lighting. And we have a concern regarding neighborhood quality. So I work for the city of Tempe. I've seen this floor plan before. 1 bedroom per bathroom and no dining room. That means 3 tenants living in a space. And in the city of Scottsdale, you do need a vehicle to get around, so that would be 3 tenants with 3 vehicles. So the moment 4 people move in that are 3 roommates and 4 units, we will have a parking spillover, and we do have a concern about this. These are not for home ownership. They seem to be developed more for tenants, short-term and medium-term rental, and we've already seen other developments in our city that are listed at Airbnb, hotels.com as short-term rentals. We talked about the parking and our concern regarding the parking, and I wanted to talk about context. I only have 2 minutes, but we took a look at all of the developments up and down Millen Road from McDowell to McKellips Road, and here's the separations that we find. 70-foot separation, 60-foot separations. We have 85 feet separation at the closest spot. We have a condition where we have the 15 feet that only occurs for less than 20 feet. For the rest of the time, the developer has provided about 80 feet separation between buildings. And then we have 50 feet, 75 feet, 60 feet, and then we get us at 21 feet. So the average distance between developments is 59 feet, and that is considering that very low separation of the 15 feet between the 2 developments. So what we are asking is, I'm sorry, this is the wrong presentation, but I had some requests of the board. So what we want is a setback at the Arden at 30 feet. And that is because it's less of the average distance of buildings. And this isn't a 2-story to 2-story. This is a 2-story to 3-story. So we're accounting for that additional shade that is casted during the afternoon from the 3 stories. We want a realistic landscape plan that will not die and become unusable. And we also want a realistic plan that actually calls out the chain link fence and our gate and an investigation of, whether that is an access or not. I wanted to thank you for your time. I wanted to thank you for reviewing this presentation with me, and I wanted to thank staff for allowing us to show you visually what sometimes residents have to do verbally in 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Maylin. Okay. Questions?
I can start.
Oh, please.
I know Board Member Brand likes someone else to start first. So, I have several questions to the applicant and staff, I guess, but, and I met with the applicant, and they're very helpful to present the case. And I mentioned, I'm okay with elevation. I did express some concern on the southeast corner for site layout, so would like to get a couple of questions rolling. As a matter of fact, the neighbor brought up several points also. I'm hoping staff could help us clarify. I think just to go back to the neighbor comment, there is this emergency access. Is there an easement in place where we're blocking it? Have we looked into this?
Councilwoman McAllen, Board Member Faki, there is no current access, essentially with the Polk abandonment that occurred over in September 30th. All of the access necessary for the proposed site was removed.
Okay.
There was no access to that adjacent Casa de Amigos parcel.
Fair enough, and I don't think you guys will be able to release an easement if obviously they're not the owner to it. So I figured this is the case, but I just wanted to ask. There is a question about the offsite drainage on the south side. Is the offsite drainage now blocked based on this development?
Board Member Faki, not that staff is aware of. The Stormwater Department did review the drainage report submitted with this proposal and gave it the thumbs up.
But there is no offsite drainage from the south side. We're not aware, or
Not aware.
maybe it's a question to the applicant, I guess. Will the applicant be able to answer this?
So I want to make sure I understand, Mylin. And so was the concern that there is water flowing from east to west onto our site currently?
It seems there is water coming from their property to your property, yeah.
Okay, and the concern is that we would somehow not be receiving water that we're currently receiving?
Well, no, you'll be receiving it. It's historical there, but are you addressing it? If there is truly water coming, how is it addressed? My understanding from the neighbors that getting blocked was a proposed layout, so.
Well, I guess what I would say is that, and Mark can come speak to this as well, but we're not aware of any easement for drainage purposes in that corner.
You don't have to have an easement, but if there is an existing condition, it will be considered historical condition. You don't need an easement for drainage. So is there a drainage situation where water coming into the property? You have to address it. You don't have to have an easement.
Respectfully, if I have two adjacent properties and I want to accomplish my drainage on my neighbor's property, you absolutely would need an easement.
No, you don't. This is an historical case right now. So if it's already there, and if the water happened, I mean, if this is the case, everyone in Scottsdale and North Scottsdale will block property line and don't let any of the washes happen, because I tell you, there is no easement in any of the washes. But this is an historical drainage situation. If there is water crossing right now, it should be addressed. And I'm assuming staff look into it, but this is an item we should definitely, address, so.
I'm Mark Tomachek, 4368 North Civic Center Plaza, Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm the architect on the project. As far as I'm aware, every property owner is responsible to retain 100% of their own rainwater that falls on their property. We have our civil engineer that has done all the calculations from all the water on our property, and we are retaining. And fortunately, we do have that frontage where all the water is coming. Nobody is allowed to send rainwater off to somebody else's private property unless it's an easement or a right-of-way.
I wish this is the case, man. This is what I do for a living, too. I'm telling you, if you have offsite coming in for your property, you have to address it. You don't block it. It's what's there. So I understand what you're saying, but this is what I do every day. If every wash, let me finish. If there is a project, if this is the case, every offsite project you get blocked because it's your property, create a huge adverse impact for every development. This is why you go through the entitlement process. So my question is clear. Is there offsite flow right now coming to your property, and is it addressed? This is a whole question.
So our civil engineer has done all the work. They've worked with staff. I didn't hear anything about it. I wasn't made aware of it, and nobody informed us of it.
Okay.
So
So I think this is a point staff need to get to the bottom of, because as staff knows, obviously, if there's offsite drainage need to be addressed, even if there is no easement. You don't just block offsite drainage and create adverse impact. This is why you go through the entitlement process. So this item, it needs to be technically reviewed. Obviously, staff, I don't know, probably they already checked it, but if not, we owe the neighbor, an answer on this. A couple of things, and I know I mentioned to Mr. Earl here my preference, even before, outside of what neighbor concern is, to move these houses further west. And I think the big pushback, which I could see is this open space, right? I mean, the requirement of open space. And I will wait for maybe Mr. Carr and the planner to be with me. But so this whole discussion on variance, I mean, you have a project here because when I look at the site plan, I mean, you're showing 24-inch or 36-inch box tree, which is a lot of money, awesome trees you're showing on the east side. And I look at those trees, half of them or more, like if you look at the canopy, they're hitting the building. I mean, this is like 10 feet as, the neighbor mentioned it, I had it noted. I mean, you have the balcony at 10 feet, and you're 6 feet away. I don't even see how those 36-inch box has any chance of living. So how does this meet the requirement of landscaping to have, a 36-inch box, eventually will be 20 to 25 feet canopy, where you don't even have 6 feet room for this canopy? I mean, it's either we have to approve smaller landscaping, which obviously I don't recommend, but those trees will not survive. There is no way. So how those trees will survive, I guess, in this situation?
Board Member Faki, looking at the landscape plan, that is just a rendering, essentially, of what the canopy could be. It doesn't necessarily equate to how the tree would grow. I think Taylor and his team can kind of give you a little bit more understanding of the trees that are going to be proposed in that area and how they currently and will grow.
Yeah, I would love to look at this. I'm looking at the landscape plan, and they do show the right canopy. They're showing 20 feet canopy right now, based on the 6 feet setback. So I'm curious how those trees will survive. I mean, I'm counting at least 7 trees on the east side. So what are those trees, I guess? Are they like 7 feet tall? And I mean, they're not 20 feet canopy as presented. Can we learn a little bit about those trees?
Sure. So the nature, right, so Steph's correct, right? So the landscape plan is showing that canopy, but these trees can be groomed for that area. Now, if there's a concern and we want to go to mountain laurels, which would be a much different canopy, we can certainly do that. We can meet, you asked about meeting the requirement. We can certainly meet the requirement with trees that have a much more limited canopy, but we're hearing concerns about privacy, and so what we're trying to do is find the right tree that could grow in that space, that could be groomed and trimmed without it having to, some that have the more sort of round canopies will be a little more challenging. These that can grow in that sort of straight space. We thought this was a good tree, and in working with a landscape architect, talking about neighbors' concerns, we came up with this species of tree. Now again, if the concern is that the canopy would be too large, we can reduce that to a smaller tree, but we're trying to find the right balance.
But even a smaller tree though, and again, I'm not a landscape architect, but I mean, even this tree you show here, I cannot even imagine this tree trimmed for 6 feet. I mean, this is here, what you show in this screen on the left side, this is at least 18 to 20 feet canopy, right? So trimming it on 6 feet just to make it between the balcony and obviously, the trunk. I don't know how this will happen. This is where I'm confused. So those trees over there, I don't see those trees growing. I don't see them even meeting any requirement with how close you are between the canopy and the property line.
Yeah, and so just thinking out loud with you, what we could do in that spot, if the concern is, obviously we're just showing a generic, we're showing the species, right? But if the concern is that, hey, we're not sure that it would succeed in that area, we can build in options into the landscape plan. So if in the future we need to swap that out, we can. And we can put it in the approval that can be changed to this tree if it needs to be. And obviously, we have to stay in conformance with our plan, right? If that tree dies, it has to be replanted. But if we want to put in options so we're not just replanting the same tree and having the same result, we can certainly do that. I would also just note that, or we can go out of the gate and we can choose a smaller canopy tree that don't get very large. Also, to the north, I would just say the condition's different, right, as I showed in that slide, right? So if we're talking about just a couple of pinch
I'm talking about
points-
the south side, we're talking about the 8 trees on the south, but to your point, if the site plan get approved as it is, these trees doesn't work and should be replaced. Now, again, it put you in requirement issue, whatnot, but based on how tight this area and based what you have on the canopy, it's going to be taking a lot of creativity to put some trees that live there. What's proposed today, if this site plan go forward, doesn't work. So it has to be changed. Like those trees will not work based on 6 feet away from between the canopy and the property line. They're not going to grow. And I think we have to look into this aspect. So this being said, I go back to my original point on the open space. And I understand we're stuck on open space. And at the same time, what we do here, when I look at this, architect did a good job, it's a nice building, the owner has the right to develop it, we're looking at site plan. So when I look at the site plan here, I see this huge open space in front that doesn't make any sense to me. And I see his entrances coming in from the east side, which people will come in from the east side to come into their houses. So in my mind, the best area to have open area will be where people coming into their places. So, and I mentioned this to the applicant, I say, well, we have to go through variance, we have to go through all kind of like processes, but it is the right thing to do. So where can we help from the board here standpoint or from staff to make this site plan better? What's our option other than the variance? And if there is a variance, can we support the variance as a board so we give some room on the east side, it address some of the neighbor, but more is a better site plan. People who are coming in, it's even better for the applicant where you have a better circulation, better entrances or to those units.
If I can, Board Member Faki, just weigh in for a moment. This board is not allowed to grant variances. It's just not one of the powers that DRB has. And from a legal standpoint, the city cannot compel a property owner to go get a variance. So I would just like to remind the board to keep that in mind. While it's something that the applicant could do voluntarily, the city can't compel them to go get a variance.
Understood. So we don't have any authority to reduce the open space, so we only have to look at the restriction and critique the site plan as it is?
Correct. Whatever the existing development standards are, the board is bound by evaluating the application with the existing development standards.
How tough is, can we suggest a variance or we cannot even suggest it?
I think the board is certainly able to provide suggestions in terms of what the applicant can be required to do or how the application can be handled. I don't believe it could be done in a way where we're essentially forcing them in a roundabout way.
Fair enough. So one question also that came in as far as guest parking, I know this came up before. I think we do have 2 guest parking in the north side of the drive, right? I think you show 3 parking, 1 ADA and 2
and then one sort of due east of the main drive. So there's 4 guest spaces in addition to the garages.
Where is the 4th one? I'm sorry.
If you were to sort of drive into the project and keep driving without turning, you would hit it.
So where the one straight between those 2 houses? Yeah, or 2 units. Is this what's required right now for space? Yes. Okay. So going again, from my side, I see what the applicant doing. I can relate to them. At the same time, I really have a hard time with this corner on the east side. I mean, just having this overhang to be the canopy to be that close to the property line, I mean, this is going to be a horrible experience even for the people living there. I mean, you're coming into a really tight area where I find it really challenging. Now, I take you guys look at all the other options. I will leave it to other board members to see how they think about it. If we're stuck in a layout, we're stuck in a layout. I don't know if there is more flexibility on the unit, if there is something else could be done. But I really could relate about this east side, especially on those row of 5 units. It's not the best layout, it really isn't. It's like we're forcing it there. And I saw what you did on the comparison, and I can relate to that. However, what you showed there, all of those are the same development. This is not two different development. So all of the example you showed, 22 feet, 26 feet, 27 feet, these are part of the same development during planning of a future project. It wasn't a distance from an existing condition. And it's a 3-story next to 2-story. Again, I'm not looking at that, but this layout on the east, I'm having really challenge with, and I don't have the answer what the right solution on it, and I want to be fair to you as well, but I just want to bring this up. Maybe other board member have a better idea or better English to present it or better vocabulary or whatnot. But the last item is what the applicant mentioned about the ADA. I don't know, I have no idea if it meet ADA or not, probably staff or the applicant can answer to this. Is there any ADA challenge based on the distance?
This has been reviewed and is ADA compliant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I will leave it to the other board member here. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman McAllen, if I may, real quickly, just to follow up on Board Member Fakih's questions about the site drainage. As Mr. Zimmer noted, our stormwater staff did review and approve the applicant's submitted drainage report. Within that drainage report, it does acknowledge the existing conditions, which are essentially full runoff because there's no on-site retention. That runoff goes to the southeast corner of the site presently, as noted by one of the speakers. But the report, further states that off-site flows will be collected in proposed swales and routed around the site while remaining separate from the on-site flows, on-site runoff. Those swales will then direct the flow to the south side of the site, where it will exit the property via the existing wall openings in the property of the south, as it does today. And that would leave flow leaving the site locations in post-developed conditions the same as and without any increase over the pre-developed conditions.
And this is typical. I mean, you have the historical in and out, but I don't see it here. This was my challenge. So is there any way where we can show the channel? Can you point to the channel that just referred to that collecting the offsite currently?
I think I have it. Yeah, probably not. I don't think we have the civil plan. This is not an issue that had been previously raised, so we weren't prepared to show that. Apologies, but it sounds like it's been reviewed and approved by the city, so I think they're at least aware of it.
But just the channel is on the south side. Is this what's going on? Do we know where this channel is?
Councilwoman McAllen, Board Member Fakih, that's what it sounds like per the drainage report. I don't have that civil plan in front of me.
Yeah, and I don't see the channel on the landscape plan, so it's something we'll have to clarify as well. If there is an offsite channel, we should have it labeled or at least shown to make sure the grading work for it.
And I believe that south side is an alley. Is that not the alley between this and Circle K?
Yeah, Councilwoman McAllen, it is a driveway, yes, that enters into the Casa development.
We just want to make sure there is no adverse impact to the neighbor or any floodings.
Oh, yeah, you want to put that in? Oh, okay.
Okay. Councilmember Brandt, did you have a question?
Madam Chair, if we do have an answer, we do have the graphic if.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Hey, we're going to make it work. How do we zoom? We're going to go here. We're going to make this work. Wait for it. Zoom out. Zoom my phone out.
That's a great exhibit to have up for my first question on here. If you can scroll over to the eastern part of that, you have both a existing site wall and an on-site new retaining wall. Is that correct? It shows it right here. It looks like along your property line there's an existing wall, and then about 2 feet off of that you've got a retaining wall shown. And then somewhere in there you're planting a tree between those two walls.
No, the property to the south is lower than we are. So this retaining wall is sort of subterranean for us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's holding our property from spilling over into the...
I'm talking about as it turns up northbound on the eastern property edge. If you kind of scroll the phone down a little bit, yep. So you've got flow that's happening along there. You've got a It looks like a 3-foot max retaining wall, and then you've got an existing screen wall that's right next to it. And if I'm looking at your plan correctly, you've got trunks of trees in that 2-foot area between a 3-foot retaining wall and a existing site screening wall. So can someone explain to me how a tree is going to grow between two walls that are 2 feet apart?
Yeah, so and Mark can jump in here too, but because we have it as part of a network of paths, it allows the roots to go north and south. If we were putting it in a box of 2 by 2, it'd be a little different than if you're putting it in a strip where the roots can go north and south.
With all due respect, man, I've done a lot of work, and we would never plant a tree between those 2 walls. Even if it did work, it would uproot and kill the foundation of the existing screen wall. You're going to have to plant that tree on the high side of the retaining wall. I mean, you would admit that, correct? Mr. Tomczak, you guys are going to have to plant that tree on the...
The tree will be outside of that. It'll be closer towards our building.
Yeah, closer to your building, yeah. Which is, again, if you're looking at the setback, and that's the other question on this condition, because I think this is the highlight just in general. When we reviewed the case, this is the condition that is the most difficult to swallow. I will 100% agree with Mr. Fakih that every single example that you showed was an internal property condition that was designed within its own community. And it was a space that trees were growing in, but the reason why trees were growing in there is that there weren't multiple screen walls or anything between in that 25 feet. It was an open condition. So it wasn't a borderline between 2 properties. It was 2 buildings that were on the same property. So this is a much different condition because you've got a property line, you've got existing screen wall foundation, and now you've got a retaining wall in there. So I was also going to ask Mr. Carr or from the planning side, the development standard for the building setback. Is this considered a rear property line or a side property line? And what's the setback standard here?
Certainly, Councilwoman McGowan, Vice Chair Brand. When it comes to multifamily zoning, as this is R5, there's not really a side or rear. There's usually just a front and then everything else. And so this would be that everything else that gets captured is not a front. And that would be typically either, they could go as close as 0. The code says when an R5 development like this abuts another R5, they can actually build a building on the property line. But if a setback is provided, it needs to be at least 10 feet.
Okay, and is there language within the R5 that defines overhangs as allowable to go into setbacks? Or what's the language? I know that's in the downtown code, but can you outline the language?
Certainly, Vice Chair. Within our residential districts, the zoning ordinance provides a exception for overhangs of certain parts of the building to overhang or encroach into the setback requirement. This building is taking advantage of the maximum amount, I believe, at 4 feet.
Does the verbiage describe occupiable patio spaces, or is it intended for roof eaves?
It's both. The language does describe both eaves and balconies.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask the question too. You've talked about this being in process for 18 months. When was the original submittal for DRB? Your first full, complete submittal?
So we marked it 18 months, a little bit more, but from the pre-app date being in April of 2024.
Oh, from a pre-app, okay.
Yeah.
When was the actual, so how long has this been in DRB right now?
I can answer that, Vice Chair Brand. The application was submitted October 29, 2024.
Okay, so it's been about a year. Is the complication on this from the length of time? Have you guys had to undergo redesign for this, redesign of the site during the DRB process?
Yeah, Mark, do you want to speak to that? You've been more involved in that.
Yeah, so we worked and met with staff multiple times. Our initial site plan didn't even have that open frontage space. That came up a little bit later. It's not a common, it only happens on a portion of Miller Road. So it's not something that happens on every road in Scottsdale. It's just here. So that came about after the second review, so then we had to readjust everything. Then refuse and fire on a site this small, which right now this property has no turnaround or anything. So making that work, working with refuse to make sure that they can come in safely, turn around, and get out took some time. And then the abandonment also kind of took part of it. So there's just a lot of moving parts. We worked hard. The civil challenges also took some time. So, you know, you put everything together and it amounts to about 12 months on a project this size.
No, I agree. I'm actually just for our own benefit trying to understand the length of time that it takes to get these projects through an entitlement like this. You know, we're all trying to be sensitive to making sure that we're making great decisions and about doing great projects here, and just trying to fully understand the path that you guys took to get here. Sometimes it's not always that clear. Let's see, other questions that I had. We'll get into. I'm in agreement with Mr. Faki that in a lot of these side and backyard conditions, and even as you were discussing the R5 in different residential neighborhoods about the side yard conditions, about a 5-foot or a zero wall, those conditions aren't occupiable balconies and frontages of units. Those are truly side conditions of walls. And normally those are side conditions that don't have a lot of windows in them. First of all, it's a building code issue because of your proximity to the property line, but these are also non-visible conditions. Like, I live in a really tight single-family neighborhood that has 5-foot side yard. There are no windows. We don't have like a big patio facing out there on, you know, that's not where people are doing this. So from a historical context and the relevant comparison of these conditions, I think that your comparison analysis is off, because you clearly have a front and back of a unit, and you've got the end cap of these units is really the side condition where you've got limited openings, and you've got one side that has multiple openings. It's your living space that opens up onto a balcony, and that's the part that is really the front of the house. And unfortunately, that's the portion that is up against a really minimal setback, and it's not a true kind of side yard condition. So I think there's some clarification of information that you shared that has different, it does show similar dimensions, but it's a very different application that is just showing a different condition. So I appreciate the exhibits from both the neighbor's presentation and Mr. Earl's presentation. But as you're looking through this stuff, you're presenting dimensions, and even in everyone's presentation, even the neighbor's presentation, these are conditions that are anomaly conditions, and it's not a repeated condition. So I appreciate all the work from both parties, but anyhow, let's see.
Mr. Brand, can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
Is that all right? Yeah, so I agree that contexts are very different, sites are very different. I think some of the examples that were shared, that we're pointing to 70 feet, it's because it's across the street, or you add in the driveway, or there was a drainage channel. And so sites that are big, sites that have the ability to put in a driveway or something like that in between. I mean, I've worked on a lot of sites as well, and the first thing I sort of think about is, okay, can we shuffle this? Can we move that? And the challenge on this site is that it's so small, and there isn't simply a way where you can just shuffle the driveway to the east side or somehow put the open space that's required on Miller to be pushed over there. So I want you to know, and the board to know, that we did try to look at those things. And when we originally met, and this goes back to an earlier comment, you know, one of the things we talked about was that we would be willing to plant trees on their side. Not something that can be stepped to here. We can put it on the record, and we're still willing to do that. That we would put those on their side. We also offered to do some type of privacy screening on their windows. We were trying to think out of the box. Things that I sort of explained couldn't be stepped because it's off-site, but that we could do a letter, we could put it on the record today. I mean, there's things that we tried to be creative about it, but it is simply just the site. These infill developments are very difficult, and we obviously can't control how their project was built and the location in which it was built, and we're just stuck with the property that we have and the space that we have and trying to make it high level and fit.
Okay. Donna, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Everything that I was thinking has already been addressed. I immediately, when I was looking at this, thought variance for that front setback against Miller. I didn't realize we can't make a recommendation for a variance, which is unfortunate. The other thing I'm looking at, well, there was also, somebody mentioned, and I don't know who it was, that this was a conceptual site plan or landscape plan. I don't take this as being conceptual. When we were talking about the circumference of the trees and that sort of thing, to me, I've drawn hundreds of landscape plans for residential developments. You draw them to scale and with what you think the maximum size will be. And to me, these maximum sizes, I agree, just do not fit in this area. Plus, if you look at that side yard up against the other development, it's wider at the north side versus the south side, which means it just gets worse as you go along that property line. So, even at the very north side, I don't see the trees fitting. At that south end, that south corner, it's ridiculous to think that they would fit in there. And I just, I understand that you're trying to get the maximum number of units to the site, but sometimes a site just will not accommodate that maximum number and still be livable. And that was the main thing I wanted to say.
Thank you. Board Member Pieser, do you have any comments?
I guess the only thing that I would say is I realize that we've been counseled up here that we can't recommend trying to get a variance on the open space at Miller Road. My question would be would they be allowed to apply for a variance for that, or is this just chiseled in stone that nothing can be done with it, you're done?
Councilwoman McGowan, Board Member Pieser, the applicant could certainly voluntarily, as Mr. Morrison stated, request a variance. But the staff and the DRB has no say in that process. That's a process that happens outside of the purview of this board.
No, I understand. I was just kind of curious from the standpoint that what we've heard here today is everything that's been going on over the last year between the residents next door and the Arden, and it just didn't seem like that ever was a subject that was brought up. Was that ever approached?
Actually, it was, and so I appreciate the opportunity to address that. So when this was originally, as Mark mentioned, it wasn't brought up in their first reviews. It came up later because it's kind of a funky area on Miller. And so we did ask that question. And I don't want to characterize staffs inappropriately, or misstate it, I should say. But we sort of took from it, you can always file, but I don't know if that's something staff that support, or that would be granted. And if I've misstated, Brad, please correct me. But I can tell you that I just went through a variance process that was somewhat similar in that we had a building in a location, and the board asked, but can you meet the standard? Staff, can they meet the standard? Because it is necessary to preserve reasonable property rights. Is it truly necessary? Could it be moved? And they said, yes, it could be moved. And I said, well, if I do that, I'm going to be putting that building closer to the resident to the south, whereas right now it's up against the street where we're asking to keep it. I'd have to put it up against the resident, I understand, but can it be done? And that was a huge problem with our application, is that it was the feeling that it can be done. Here, we have a site plan that, although it's not, there's these concerns, they will say, but can it be done? And so that's a huge problem. And so we took from that, yeah, we can go file something, but we got real grave concerns, including my own personal recent experience, that wasn't going to be successful. So we absolutely understand, and if we had designed this plan without any of those restrictions, we would not have put our open space all along Miller Road. We would have spread it out. We would have done the things we're talking about, or tried to, right, and try to shuffle it around. There's, frankly, the other challenge is that we have the hammerhead, and so you have that road needs to be aligned north and south, right? So you can't have a situation where it's offset like this. But again, we did go down that path So I want the board to understand there wasn't something that we just dismissed out of hand, that we did go down that path.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, because based on everything I've heard here from the board tonight, when we all opened this plan up and saw that southeast corner was like, had a neon light around it. It was, and then hearing the comments that were made at Planning Commission Council last week, and I think at the last board meeting here, it's been highlighted all through this process, so it's just a real concern to have the situation set up where an existing project is going to be so affected by a new project. I also agree with that a lot of the projects to the north that were shown were built as a single project with the setbacks against their own buildings, not against the buildings in the next property. So I kind of discount those type of things because they knew what they were doing when they built those properties. But I appreciate your answer.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I just wanted to address the concern that it was, maybe an unlivable condition or that trees couldn't grow in that environment, right? I do recognize the difference between something that's internally done versus external. I appreciate that, but I wanted to show that this is not something without precedent, that there are people living in that environment or that trees are not growing in that space. Thank you.
Board Member Faki.
I just have, again, well, I can understand the applicant. They've been through this process for a while, came in, and from what I'm hearing from the board, this section on the east side has a challenge. And I will, from staff, I would really encourage staff, if this is continue and whatever happened, that to support the variance, if you could support the variance, because this makes so much sense it will add so much value to this development. So from my side right now, when I look at this, I think something has to give. I mean, I'm hearing for the board member, probably the best approach here to continue this for you guys to look into site plan, maybe reduce some square feet or pursue a variance to get more square footage, but build a situation on the east side here, maybe somehow add another 14 feet there, 10 to 14, just to get the tree built up, get in a situation that work. And I think this could be something maybe, instead of putting it for a vote today, maybe just continue it just to get the site plan to work out better instead of voting on it today. This will be my recommendation. The second part I want to mention, I noticed you guys, and this thing you put Mr. Earl on the screen for elevation-wise, you guys filling up like 4 feet as well? Is this how does this relate to the elevation on Miller Road, I guess? When I look at your plan that you show on your phone, so you're adding 4 feet to the existing grade now I fill. Is there any situation where we're filling 4 feet?
No, that's the current condition.
No, the current condition is 92. You're going finished lower elevation, 96.4. Can you put the phone back?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to the screen you were showing us on the wall or whatever works for you.
An additional challenge that we haven't really even brought up, but there's a property to the north, so this property right here, we are giving them access to their property. So this driveway that's ours is also, they're going to be using that. So that was just an additional challenge where we couldn't really move that drive north or south to create this hammerhead.
The polka alignment.
So that had to stay, and then the hammerhead had to stay, and we ran out of property. So again, I'm only an architect, I'm not an engineer.
I don't know no, good.
But I'm guessing we started here and we have to meet these contours, and that's how they ended up where they ended up.
But you are filling 4 feet though. If you look at the site inside, your existing elevation right now is 92, and your finished lower elevation is 96.4 from my scene.
Can you
So yeah,
scroll
here we
down?
go. So 92.4, and your finished lower. So these are 4 feet fill, and this is 4 feet fill because of the situation at the entrance. Because you're going.
Because the existing here is 95.
Okay. So this is coming back to be your ultimate outfall somewhere over there, or I don't know, something to look at just to make sure, again, drainage part. You are filling 4 feet, this will be expensive. I mean, you're adding 5,000, 6,000 cubic yard. So I don't know if there is an opportunity to reduce the height, maybe this help a little bit, but maybe it is what it is. So I just want to point this out, so thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Mason, I know you're online. Do you have any questions?
I've been looking at this. I've reviewed the site with the applicant, and looking at the configuration of where the townhouses are, it's a very tight house situation to do much of anything. The only thing you could really do is to sacrifice the open area on the west side of the property, and that would create a problem that allows some shifting of the units on the eastern side, but that would also impact the area for the turnaround for the vehicles. It's a very, very tight space. To my impression, I think the owner has done a really good job of fitting in as best he can within this very tight situation. My concern is that that we have the R5 zoning and it has been existing there, and yeah, when people buy into R5 zoning, they are aware that there can be another R5 property built next door, or they should be. And this is a situation where the property is going in, and anytime you build a property, it's going to impact other people with the idea that, well, you're building a property in my view, or building a property in my, casting light on my shadows, but private property rights would allow him to do that. And I think that looking at the limitations of the site, it seems like it's one of the best possible outcomes unless you start allowing them to allow us variations on the open space on the western side of the property. I don't see much else that can be done. That's just my opinion. I don't know what the architect thinks about those suggestions, but if you did that, that would allow the unit which is on the southeastern part to be maybe moved to the west another 4 feet. But I'm not sure that would solve the problem.
Thank you very much. Okay. With that, any more comments? Do I have a motion?
I'm going to make a motion real quick. Hopefully. I do think that in the spirit of the discussion today, I believe that the overall use and the infill and the layout of the site is a good use. And this is me personally, I think what we've said, we're not opposed to this. I think that given the guidelines and the context of the area and of how we survey the success and the quality of what's being proposed, that the tapered condition along the eastern property edge from the northern edge down to the southern is presenting a real problem. I will say that me personally, I'm not sure about Mr. Faki or the other members that have commented, but it seems like the northern edge condition is not nearly as much of an issue as the southern edge along the east property line. That northern edge, it's the tapering effect along with the change in grade that, again, you've got a retaining wall condition there. You've got retaining of 3 to 4 feet that you're also trying to grow a tree in. Like I will point out that I don't believe the bottom 5 trees are even viable. I don't think that anything with a root structure is viable there, minus some hedges and ground cover, just because of the proximity of a screen wall and a retaining wall. So I do believe, though, that the condition on the north edge and the property and the setback conditions are appropriately laid out. And I think we've all looked at this and thought, if your desire is to not lose units, that a quality site layout may involve pursuance of a variance of the historical setback and frontage open space that's specifically the property of the north, to the north of here. And I don't know if that's how, I do not know how variances are processed, but I would like to give, as a board, I would like to make a motion that gives you room to pursue that and to understand that while not denying this. But I believe that what we've said today is that this plan needs to change in order to meet what we view as how we judge these plans. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to continue this case to allow the applicant time to work with staff and to understand how the frontage open space may be offset to come forward with a better site plan that addresses the southeast corner of the site in a more contextually appropriate manner.
Can I throw something in there? Sorry.
Sure.
If we were to rotate clockwise the site plan to where the property and the buildings are parallel to match, so everything would match what we have on the north, would that be a solution that would?
That's a good question. I think if you did that, though, you'd be looking at adding 8 feet to the setback of the southern edge, which would put you out of your range of your frontage open space.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's why we are where we
Yeah.
are. But if,
I would defer to me. I would be in support of that if the northern edge was aligned across the entire east edge of the property. I can't speak for the other board members, though.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Councilwoman McCallum, if I could just intervene for 1 second
Certainly.
before we take the second. For clarification purposes, Vice Chair Brand, it would be helpful if we could just clarify whether or not the motion to continue is to a date to be determined or to a date certain.
To be determined.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Does anybody else have any comments? I am going to voice.
I have a comment.
Oh, okay. Board Member Mason?
I see if I understand what we are suggesting here is that the 2 units on the western side, southern western side, are to get a variance to move those into this open space on the western side, which would allow the unit on the southeastern corner to then be moved forward. Is that what we're suggesting, that we get a variance to eat into or reduce the amount of open space requirement on that southwest corner?
Board Member Mason, I will let Board Member Brandt speak to his motion.
Let me clarify, sorry. The motion is not to suggest a specific movement at all. The motion is to continue the case to allow the applicant to explore conditions, changes or a variance process that may improve the property condition on the southeast corner. We're not specifically saying move this here or move this there. We're making a continuance to allow them the time to work with staff to explore options.
Thank you for your clarification. I do want to speak to this. My one comment is I'm really concerned about the drainage because the drainage is falling off into the road that enters into your units. This would be a perfect weekend to look at it. It's supposed to rain the entire weekend, just a suggestion. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to continue this to a date to be determined later. Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman McAllen,
Yay.
Vice Chair Brand,
Yes.
Board Member Peaser,
Yes.
Board Member Fakih,
Yes.
Board Member Mason,
Yes.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this will be continued. Thank you all. And unanimous adjournment, correct? Thank you.
So moved.